Sometimes reality slips. You catch a glimpse of something that shouldn't exist, a time that stutters, a place that disappears. Tonight, we explore 3 true stories from people who stepped outside the normal world and came back, changed. You might never see rain or shadows the same way again. Story 1. The Town That Forgot the Year.
Everyone else thought it was 2023, but I swear, it used to be 2026. I didn't notice anything wrong until I got off the highway. The sign said, "Welcome to Shelburne, population 9,011. But the last time I saw it, the number was higher, 9,310, and the paint, it wasn't peeling like this. I hadn't been back in almost 4 years. After college, I moved to Denver, cut ties with my hometown, and never looked back. But my mom had passed away, and her old house was still in my name. I had to come clean it out. I drove through the familiar streets, but something was off. The stores looked older. The gas station had a sign for $3.19 a gallon. I knew it hadn't been that low in years. A billboard advertised the 2022 Fall Festival. I blinked. Wait, 2022? Maybe it was just an old poster. I stopped at the diner. Same red vinyl booths, same waitress, Jenny, behind the counter. She hadn't aged a day. "Back in town?" she asked, smiling. "Yeah, been a few years." She tilted her head. "Didn't you just leave last year?" "No, it's been 4. I moved in 2022. Jenny's smile faded. "It is 2023. I laughed. "No, it's 2026. She looked genuinely confused. "Are you okay, hun?" I pulled out my phone. The lock screen showed the date, October 9th, 2023. That couldn't be right. I checked the settings, restarted it, same thing. I opened my email. The latest message was from March 2023. Where were all the emails from the last 3 years? I checked my banking app. The last deposit was from a company I hadn't worked at in years. Panic rose in my chest. I drove to the high school. I remembered they installed a new gym in 2024. It wasn't there. The old one still stood, cracked windows and all. I visited the library, asked the clerk what year it was. She laughed nervously and said, "2023, are you messing with me?" I called my old roommate in Denver. The number was disconnected. I messaged a coworker from my current job. No response. It was like the future had been erased. That night, I stayed at my mom's house. I found my old journals filled with entries from 2024, 2025, trips I'd taken, people I'd dated, job interviews. But my laptop had no files after mid-2023. My clothes were older. Even my body. I looked in the mirror and realized I hadn't gained the weight I did after 2024. I tried leaving the next morning, but the roads were closed. Police said there'd been a rock slide. I took a back route. It looped me back into town. Every time I tried to leave, I ended up right back at Main Street. It was like I'd been trapped in a pocket of time. Days passed, then weeks. No one believed me. Not the sheriff, not the pastor, not even the kids I used to babysit, now teenagers again. One night, I walked to the edge of town. There was a line on the pavement, faint, almost glowing in the moonlight. I stepped past it, and suddenly, everything went quiet. The stars above me flickered like pixels. My body felt stretched. And then, I was back in my car, parked on the side of a highway. But the sign ahead still read, "Welcome to Shelburne, population 9,011. And the radio was playing a song from 2022. I've left over 20 times. Different roads, rental cars, even on foot. But I always end up back here. And each time I do, fewer people remember me. The town's losing time, looping, compressing. I found a newspaper last night. No date. The ink dissolves when I try to scan it. And today, I passed a man on the sidewalk. It was me, a younger version, stepping out of his mom's car, back from college. He didn't see me, but I think he's about to find out what year it is.
Story 2. The Man in the Wrong Life.
Have you ever felt like your life is exactly as it should be, until one moment changes everything? I always thought I had a pretty normal life. I'm 34 years old, married to a wonderful woman named Karen, and we have 2 beautiful kids, Ben and Lily. We live in a modest 2-story home in Michigan. I work in IT, boring but stable, reliable, the kind of life where you know what to expect. Or at least I thought I did. It started on a Tuesday. That matters because Tuesdays are the most predictable days for me. I take the same route to work, eat the same egg sandwich, and listen to the same podcast. I was halfway through an episode about productivity hacks when the world hiccuped. I was walking into my office building when I blinked, and suddenly I was standing in a hallway I didn't recognize. It wasn't a glitch in memory. It wasn't confusion. I was literally somewhere else. The air was colder. The floor beneath my feet had changed from concrete to warm wood panels. The hallway was longer than any I'd ever walked before, lit by recessed lights that flickered faintly. I turned around. No office building, just more hallway. I checked my phone. Still had battery. Still said Tuesday. Still said Michigan. But the wallpaper, my lock screen, wasn't my usual photo of my wife and kids. It was a photo of me, alone, standing in this exact hallway, smiling. I don't smile like that. Panicked, I started opening the doors lining the hallway. Most were locked. One opened into a pristine modern kitchen, empty. Another into a child's bedroom. No photos, no names, just eerie silence and the hum of a refrigerator. I ran back to the hallway. That's when I noticed a mirror on the wall. In the reflection, I wasn't wearing what I'd worn that morning. I was in a gray suit, sharp, expensive, something I'd never own. My hair was combed differently and I looked older, more polished. It felt like watching a version of myself who had made entirely different life choices. And then I heard it, voices behind one of the doors. "Jonathan," a woman called. "Are you home early?" I froze. That's not my name. Before I could answer, the door swung open. A woman stood there, mid-30s, blonde, pretty. She looked right at me and smiled like she'd known me her whole life. "You okay?" she asked. "You look pale." I wanted to say, "I'm not Jonathan." I wanted to scream, "Where am I?" But I didn't. Somehow, I answered, "Just tired." She kissed my cheek and pulled me inside. And I went. I stayed in that place for 4 days. I tried to convince myself it was a dream, but everything felt too sharp, too real. Every texture, every taste, every interaction, it all had weight. This woman, Emily, was my wife there. We had no kids, but we lived in a gorgeous downtown apartment. I worked for a tech startup, apparently successful, judging by my bank account. I tried to act like Jonathan, but I was always on edge. I kept expecting to wake up. But then on the 4th night, something happened. Emily rolled over in bed and whispered, "Do you ever feel like this life isn't yours?" My blood ran cold. She continued, "Sometimes I get flashes. A boy and a girl and you, but different." I sat up slowly. "What do you mean?" She shook her head. "It's like I remember having children, a house with a red door, a dog named Milo, but we don't have a dog." We stared at each other in the dark. She whispered, "Is this real?" I didn't answer. The next morning, I decided to try something. I stood in the same hallway where I'd first appeared, right in front of the mirror. I stared at my reflection, willing something to shift. And for a split second, it did. The hallway flickered. My reflection changed. I was in my IT polo shirt again. The background behind me was my office lobby. The light was warmer. I blinked, and I was back. Just like that. Standing outside my office, my coffee still warm in my hand, podcast still playing, as if no time had passed. But everything felt wrong. When I got home, Karen hugged me, the kids ran into my arms, the dog barked. It was all how it should be. But it didn't feel like it was, because now every mirror feels like a threat. Every hallway makes me wonder if I'll blink again and vanish into someone else's life. And the worst part? Sometimes I miss Emily. When you see yourself in the mirror, how do you know which version of you is the real one?
Story 3. The Rain That Shouldn't Have Fallen.
The third story drops us into a memory so strange, even time itself seemed confused. A rainstorm that fell on only one house and never happened anywhere else? I grew up in a quiet neighborhood in Vermont, where nothing strange ever really happened. Just the usual small-town routines, church on Sundays, snow in the winters, and block parties in the summer. But one afternoon when I was 9 years old, something happened that still unsettles me to this day. It was a Saturday, late spring. I remember because I had just finished my piano lesson and was allowed to go outside and play. The sky had been partly cloudy, not dark, not stormy, just a typical breezy day. I was out on the front lawn of our house with my little brother, kicking around a rubber ball when the first raindrop hit my forehead. I looked up. The clouds were still white, puffy, nothing threatening. But then, all at once, it started pouring. But here's the thing. It was only raining over our house. I don't mean it was lightly drizzling in the area or that we imagined it. I mean it was raining directly and only over our small 2-story home. The neighbors' yards, bone dry. The road, dry. Our treehouse in the backyard, soaked. It was like a sheet of water had been cut precisely over the border of our lot. My mom came running outside, confused, holding laundry she had just taken off the line. She looked up at the sky and said, "This doesn't make sense." Our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Carter, walked out of her house with a confused look and shouted, "You guys okay? It's beautiful over here." She pointed to the blue sky above her. Not a drop of rain touched her or her porch. I could see the sun glowing above her house. I remember standing right at the edge of the lawn where our grass ended and hers began. The rain literally stopped mid-air. Half my body was soaked, the other half completely dry. I could see the line. My dad came home about 15 minutes later, blinking through his windshield wipers, only to find a street was dry. He drove into the driveway through rain that wasn't on the road. He got out, stared up, and asked, "Is this a prank? But how do you prank a cloud?" We turned on the local weather radio. They reported sunny skies, no precipitation in the area. We called a friend in town, 10 minutes away, and they said it hadn't rained all week. We all stood together on the porch watching as the storm above us intensified. Thunder rumbled directly overhead, but there was no lightning, no storm clouds rolling in, just a heavy, unexplainable downpour right above us. Then, it stopped. Not faded, stopped, like someone hit pause. The water hanging in the air literally shimmered just for a split second, and then everything was still. We stood there, dripping wet in complete silence. My mom checked the thermometer. It had dropped 15 degrees in 20 minutes. The air felt wrong, like everything had been reset. The next day, we tried to talk about it at church. Some people laughed, saying maybe we were tired or saw a mirage. But our neighbor, Mrs. Carter, backed us up. She had watched it all. One house, one rainstorm, nowhere else. We even called the local news. They told us it wasn't newsworthy without weather confirmation. Years went by. We eventually stopped mentioning it, especially after my brother left for college. But about 5 months ago, now an adult, I visited home and decided to go through some of our old photo albums. In one of the albums was a photo my dad had taken that day, of the lawn. You could see the rain clearly, an actual line dividing the wet grass from the dry, with Mrs. Carter's house glowing in the sun just beyond it. But here's the part that broke me. In the background, reflected in the puddle near our porch, is a figure, a man. He wasn't anyone we knew. He was standing in the reflection, looking directly at the camera, even though he wasn't anywhere in the actual photo. I flipped through the rest of the album, panicking. And there he was again, in another photo from a different day. Always in a puddle, always watching, always when it had rained. But here's the thing, since that odd storm, it never rained over that house again. My parents moved out last year, and they said the new owners had complained about a weird dryness, even when the rest of the neighborhood gets soaked. I still wonder if that rainstorm wasn't a glitch, but a warning, or worse, an opening. Because sometimes when I dream, I hear rain that I know isn't there. And in my dreams, I'm standing on my old lawn again, watching the water shimmer, right before a man I've never met walks through it and finally steps out. If you ever find yourself beneath a storm that falls only on you, ask yourself what it's trying to reveal, or who.
What if the world isn't broken, but rewinding? These stories weren't meant to be remembered, but you heard them. Now, the glitch sees you too. Subscribe before it resets again.